So today I thought I'd film a video about how to go about filming a self-tape, because I feel like in acting we talk about self-tapes all the time, like we're talking about them loads, and when I started out I think I found that quite intimidating because I didn't really know what exactly was expected and what was industry standard until people told me a lot of these things. I just had no idea, so I thought I'd talk about the basics and then I'll leave timestamps if you want to skip to some of the things that I've learned that have helped me improve my self-tapes, because I've actually been doing self-tapes I think for like 4 or 5 years now, which is crazy, but I'll have done like a few hundred self-tapes by now, which is a very scary thought, but I feel like they're a lot better than they were. And this is not a video to say everyone should do their self-tapes like me, but I just thought there's so much that if I think back, I just had no idea about when I was starting out, because how are you expected to know all of this from the very beginning? So I just thought I'd share it all in a video. And if you would like to follow along with my acting journey or help me get to 400 subscribers, because as I'm filming this I'm gradually getting closer to 400 subscribers, if you would like to support me, see where I go, help me get there, then please do subscribe because I would really appreciate it, and let's chat about self-tapes. Firstly, setup and framing wise, you're sort of looking for a framing like I've framed this video here. When setting it up in the room, you've got to think about lighting and not creating too many shadows and just making sure you can be seen properly. So people recommend having a window behind where you're filming so you're being lit from the front like this, but as long as you don't have lighting that's too aggressive, I think it might be fine. You just don't want to have like weird shadows on this wall, you don't want to have shadows on your face so you can't see you properly, and like also to check the colour and to check it's not coming through weird colours, you can look at the colour of the wall, because I've seen before that the colour of the wall's been like orange and that shows that the lighting has gone a bit weird and it's not really the brightest that it could be. And eyeline wise, make sure you decide where the character that your character's talking to is in the room, and for reference this is me talking down the lens, but I would place it probably like on the opposite side of my screen because I'm recording it on my phone, so I would look at the other side of my phone and then I'm not looking too far away, because if you look too far away then you're missing the whole of this half of my face, which is not what you want to do. And I was told that you want the camera lens around the level of your eye line, because otherwise the shot could seem like it's shot from too low down or too high up, so having it at eye line ensures that it's at the right kind of level for them to be able to see you. And equipment wise, I don't know if maybe some people might think this is a bit controversial, but I'm not really sure if a lot of the different self-tape equipment people get is essential. Like I think it's important that you have your camera still, so if you want a tripod to do that then fine, but I think, do you need a fancy camera? No, phone cameras are quite good these days, so you don't really need a camera. Do you need a backdrop if you have a plain wall in your house? No, like I think it does the same kind of thing. And having a plain background I think is quite important, just so you seem the most professional that you can do. So preferably I would say a plain wall is quite good. This is a white, kind of off-white wall, which I think a lot of people have, but a lot of drama schools are recommending grey walls because apparently that's quite a good, nice contrast to everyone's different skin tones, and it will make you really like pop out and contrast the wall. But I think, is that really going to be a deal breaker, like if you don't have a grey wall? No. Some people like to use ring lights, but other people don't like it because it might be a bit too intense, and sometimes you get the little ring light reflections in your eyes and people find that a bit distracting and personally don't want it in their tapes. But it just depends, but I think natural lighting is fine, so you don't ever need to beat yourself up about not having the most expensive equipment and setup. And a few things I now do or really emphasize in order to smooth out my self-tape process is to really know the lines, because I think that can put you at ease a lot, because I think sometimes you can get quite tense. I feel like there's one thing I missed out here, and this is to read the information on the email as well, and all the information about the self-tape, because sometimes they might ask you for some framing that's different, they might want you to deliver the piece down the lens and that's not what you're expecting. And also in the slate, which is where like you introduce stuff at the start, you say your name, sometimes you say your agency as well, usually if you've got an agent that you're represented by. So make sure you read exactly what they want you to say in that and what information they want, and make sure that you're doing everything correctly by their requirements, because I know some people skim through it and then they end up making mistakes. So that's something that's important, to make sure you read all of the information available. It's important to try to stay calm, because I think it's quite easy to spiral, and it's important, I think, to not do it more than 3 or 4 absolute maximum times. Like 4 if something major's gone wrong, or you're doing like a really big change and it's going to be very different. Because realistically, when you're doing all of these takes, how different actually are they if someone would go through and watch them all? Like, I watched people's tapes when they have multiple different versions, and they're all quite similar, and the casting panel will be able to watch your self-tape and will be able to see, oh, they'll be able to do it in a minorly different way. Like, it's not something to stress out over and do loads of times. Like, don't do it that many times. I even heard a casting director say once that you should only really spend 10 minutes maximum filming on a self-tape, because otherwise you start to like go away from the piece, or you start making choices that really the director would want to be making, and it's no longer just kind of a raw read of what you'd look like as the character. You're then starting to overthink certain things. Really, they just want to see a natural performance of you as the character, and not something that's really overthought. So I think a big thing and a big struggle with self-tapes for a lot of people, and me earlier on when I was doing my self-tapes, that I've kind of tried to get away from, is overthinking it too much. Because I think you can watch it back and you can be like, oh, I want to do it but change this pattern of speech, and then you're not really connecting to the emotion. You're just giving yourself notes and thinking about the notes, and then the more you go through self-tapes, I think people get less and less natural, because I think they sort of lose the naturalism of the first few takes. So I think it's good to be aware of some of the different self-tape issues you can have and some of the things to look out for. But then I think the most important thing when you're actually filming is to just really ground yourself and give quite a confident performance, because they want someone who they can trust. And I think if you're nervous and panicking and getting in a self-tape spiral, I think often people can tell that. So it's important to ground yourself, and if you're feeling the emotions and you're connected, trust that that's coming across. And now when I'm picking which take to send in, often what I do, I don't know if this is recommended by everyone, but I will go off feelings, and I'll go, which take do I feel like I was most connected to the emotions in, and which take felt the most truthful when I was doing it. Because we don't often know what we look like to other people when we're feeling certain emotions. Like, I think we're quite unaware of our own expressions in everyday life. So I go off, which one did I feel most connected to? Do I need to always watch it back? Probably not really anymore. So that's just my way of processing it, is I try to not overthink it, and I try to just go with which one felt right. But I think some of the issues you can have is, for example, some people tend to start rocking back and forth in their self-tape and like moving around like in weird ways, because I guess it's a bit jarring, like you're imagining having a conversation but a camera's right there. So you can sometimes tense up as well, and then like that's not how you have a conversation. You've got to pretend that the camera's not there and you're speaking to someone maybe even who's a bit further away, and have that kind of natural movement, I think sometimes can be lost. So it's important to work on that. Also, I think in self-tapes especially, it's important to be conscious of your pattern of speech, because it's not a normal acting environment. I mean, we do self-tapes all the time, but it's not a normal set or theatre performance in that kind of way, is what I'm trying to get at. Because normally you're not just looking at nothing, so you might have a tendency to speak in quite a repetitive pattern, or to speak in like vocally in a way that you wouldn't normally, like maybe you're speaking from like the throat, or you're speaking extra high pitched, and there's all these different unnatural voice things we can do. Sometimes you end up rushing through a script, sometimes you end up having really long empty pauses, or you're speaking in weird patterns. So you've just got to be aware of that, I guess. Like sometimes we have really fast thoughts when we're speaking normally, and then sometimes we take a pause, or like we have a bit of a slower thought, or we're struggling to find the words. So I think working on that within my acting made my self-tapes better. But also maybe there will be some people who disagree with me on this, and that's fine, but stage directions and props in a script, like if you can't really do them naturally on a self-tape, maybe sometimes they're not essential to do in a self-tape if it will just be jarring and not make sense for you to have it. Like maybe if it's a children's theatre performance that you're taping for, then it might make sense and it might help to have a prop there. But having props just for the sake of props, some people don't like it and think it's a bit of a weird gimmick, and people don't tend to like props or trying to do stage directions that will just feel quite unnatural when you're doing them in a tape format and might take people out of the scene. So certain stage directions can be missed. So that's a few of the things that I have to say about self-tapes, but it actually is such a big topic and something that every actor is always learning about and improving. And there are actually various different places that you can either send off self-tapes to professionals who can give you feedback on self-tapes, like people offer that kind of service. There are classes where you can work on self-tape technique, and I've been to those kind of classes. There are lots of different opportunities in the industry and in a lot of different acting training facilities where they will help prepare you on this, because there's always stuff to be learning and there are always ways to improve in this. But if you do have any questions about self-tapes, let me know in the comments and I will get back to you. And if you have anything else that you want to say or share about self-tapes, then please do leave me a comment. I love reading them and I will go through them, so feel free to leave me a comment. And thank you so much to everyone for watching. Thank you, bye!